afternoon and welcome to another special interview show of the Broad. I'm Ritvij, and today we are discussing the future of the Quad, the strategic challenges facing the Indo-Pacific, and the role that cooperation between United States, Japan, India, and Australia will play in maintaining regional stability. Since its revival in 2017, the Quad has evolved from a constructive dialogue into a platform for cooperation on maritime security, critical technologies, supply chain, energy, and regional resilience. Yet questions remain about whether the grouping can deter coercion, maintain strategic cooperation, and adapt to an increasingly contested Indo-Pacific. Joining us today is Dr. Satoru Nagao, non-resident fellow at Hudson Institute and one of Japan's leading experts on Japan, US, and India security cooperation. Dr. Nagao, thank you so much for joining us today and a very warm welcome to the show.
Yeah, it is an honor for me. Thank you so much.
Dr. Nagao, when the Quad was revived in 2017, many observers viewed it primarily as a diplomatic dialogue. Nearly a decade later, how would you assess its evolution? Has the Quad matured into a meaningful strategic institution, or is it still largely a coordinated mechanism?
Mhm. That's a very good question. Of course, Japan and India and the US and Australia has sharing many idea. So that's why Quad is a very important place to sharing idea. And through the bilateral negotiation, most of the ideas materialize. That means the Quad is working very well. But at the same time, in this case, we should return to the idea originally what is the purpose of Quad. So that's why today I prepared a short presentation. So if you allow me, I will use the PowerPoint and explain next 5 to 10 minutes about Quad important why what is the original idea.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
it possible?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will share my presentation data. Quad is important. Why? Is the theme. So in this case, firstly, originally, who was the pioneer? Of course, Japanese can say Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a pioneer in this case. Because the 2007, he addressed in the Indian parliament. That time, in the address, including cooperation between India and Japan, of course, but at the same time, US and Australia also. So that's why, more that time, he has already addressed related to his Quad. That address title is Conference of Two Seas. So in this was a pioneer, first public statement related to the Indo-Pacific. But the Quad is very well related with the Indo-Pacific. Why? Because in the Indo-Pacific, which country is a great power? Indeed, except China, Quad is the countries to show the influence in the Indo-Pacific. So that's why two ideas are well related. But 2012, that time, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe published one short English article, which is Asia's Democratic Security Diamond in Checo. Project Syndicate is a journal. That time, he clearly mentioned about China and introduced the idea of the four democracies, which is Quad. So, from two, what is the original purpose of the Shinzo Abe is very important. Indeed, keyword is rising, China, and India. Rising means that indeed not only the Pacific side, but also the Indian Ocean side or South Asia side are rising very much. Economical development, that is very important, but at the same time, along with development, the defense budget is also rising. So indeed, influence to the world is rising. So for Indo-Pacific, instead of the Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific is the proper word. But this region is under threat of the China's domination. That is a very important to the country. So threat of China is the key. So how to deal with this threat is a matter. But in this concept, which country is most important? Indo-Pacific? Why Indo-Pacific is needed instead of Asia-Pacific? Because newcomer should be included, which is India. The Quad. If there is no India, there is no Quad. Because Japan, Australia, both are former US ally. So there is no need for the new concept. Just cooperate each other and trilateral cooperation could happen. But if Shinzo Abe want to include India, new concept is needed, which is Quad. So this means that most important country of the Quad is India. These are the background of this idea, and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe address in the Indian Parliament and published article about democratic cooperation of the four countries. So that's why this is emerging as an idea. But why this is so important? How to deal with China, and in this case, how related with the Quad? Military balance is the key. This one. So how related? The next slide, you can see. This is a slide the Ministry of Defense of Japan published. They are checking the move of China in the South China Sea. And this figure clearly indicates that when power vacuum, the China found, they expand territories. Firstly, when France withdrew from the Indochina Peninsula, the Vietnam, Cambodia, this region, China occupies half of the Paracel Island. That was happened in 1950s. 1970s, when the US withdrew from South Vietnam, China occupies another half of the Paracel Island. 1980s, Soviet troops reduced the number. China expands their activity to the Spratly Island and occupies 6 features. In 1990s, after the Cold War, US withdrew from Philippines. China took the mischief reef. Every time military balance has changed, they found the power vacuum, they occupied it. If so, how to deal with China related with how to maintain military balance? How? We can imagine if India and Japan cooperate, and the US and Australia cooperate, China need to divide their defense budget, multiple fronts. If this country has a strike capability, recently long-range strike capabilities matter, China cannot ignore any side. In this case, they need to divide their military expenditure and military assets. So that's why maintaining military balance, it is easier. That's why this cooperation is important. Geography is a matter. But we should not forget one important thing. Indeed, these Quad countries share the same problem. Especially India shares the same problem with Japan. That part, I prepare some slide. Look at this. This is China's activities, official ships activities around the Senkaku Island in the East China Sea. Senkaku Island of Japan, I need to say. This is Japan. Anyway, the increase drastically from 12 to the more than 1,000 in the 2010s. But what happened in the India-China border? Yes, increase from the 200 to the more than 600, something like that. Overlap these two figures. Oh, similarities. India and Japan share same problem. That's why India and Japan should cooperate. That's why Quad is the matter. Another figure we can see. Look at this. What is it? India's support of or military diplomacy with other country. So which country is a partner? Indeed, Indian Ocean region, orange-colored countries cooperate with India. So India's influence is growing. In Southeast Asia, there is a similarity. Many countries try to cooperate with India. So India is rising. India is rising. That's why for Japan, India is new hope. So India is not an ally of the US or Japan or Australia, but and Japan is ally of the United States, and Japan is now promoting the cooperation with Australia, semi-alliance. Most people start to talk, but at the same time, Japan needs India because India is new hope. That's why we can remember the important word of the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's address in 2007. He have already mentioned this word. Strong India is in the best interest of Japan. And the strong Japan is in the best interest of India in this address, of course. So that is the Prime Minister's idea. That is the original idea of the Quad.
Yeah, one
Very
criticism.
important.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
one criticism, Doctor, which has been of Quad is that it lacks a formal treaty structure similar to NATO, or like it lacks the military angle to it, considering China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. How do you respond to that?
Of course, there is some sensitive issue. If China know Quad is military alliance, they must fight. Which country could be the first target? To attack Japan, there is a sea between Japan and China. Australia is far. United States a little bit too strong to deal with the first target. So in this case, India could be the first target because of some reason, sharing land border, easy to cross, and another reason is there is no legal binding between India and the other three countries. So that's why if China attack India, in this China believe this is weakest link between India and other three. So easy to catch, making pressure and makes the result, which is cut the relation between India and other three. That could happen. China can believe if China decide to attack one of the Quad to disband the Quad. So that's why this could be the sensitive. In this case, how to deal with it? This is indeed this is there is an answer of this mystery. Answer is India. India say Quad is not military alliance, and the other country also say Quad is not a military alliance when the meeting has happened, despite no one asked them why. Because this is appeal point. But why they need to say despite no one asked it? Because it is military aspect. There is a military aspect. So in this case, bilateral basis military cooperation is promoting. And so, example, the U.S., India, weapon trade, one by one, they made it. And these weapons concentrate two areas, the counter-strike capability in the India-China border area and anti-submarine capabilities in the Indian Ocean. Why these two are matter? Because the target of the both capabilities is China. So, Australia, India defense trade hasn't made, but in case of the uranium or something like that, Australia provide India. This is related to the security. Japan and India recently, gradually and step by step, the defense trade is advancing, and joint exercises or sharing the sensitive information, access to each other's base, all of these agreement has already concluded between India and Japan. So that's why defense cooperation has really made even if they hasn't said the Quad is military alliance. So that's why, indeed, they have done, but they do not overemphasize the military aspect of the Quad. That is the word. Quad is not a military alliance, despite no one asks them.
Yeah, if a major regional crisis were to emerge tomorrow, whether it's in the South China Sea, East China Sea, or elsewhere in the Indo-Pacific, do you believe the Quad currently possesses the mechanisms necessary to coordinate an effective response?
Firstly, they try to identify the maritime domain awareness. So simple word is what happened in the maritime area is identified by using the cooperation or system. In this case, India is developing their capability in the Indian Ocean region, US and Australia, and of course Japan. Also, they're growing, improving the capability, and they coordinate it well. So on surface, this is the dual use cooperation, not the direct link with the military. But identifying what happened in the sea is the most basic part of the military operation. So that's why, indeed, in the Quad cooperation, there are many basic part of the military cooperation, even if they did not overemphasize this is military alliance or military cooperation. And in this case, such kind of cooperation could be more advanced one. For example, India has the Andaman Nicobar Island, and China want to deploy the submarine or other military asset to the Indian Ocean through the strait. But if they use the Malacca Strait or sea around Malacca Strait, India's Andaman Nicobar Island is waiting. Their submarine leave from the Hainan Island in the South China Sea and crossing the strait, and in this case, they need to identify in the Indian Ocean. But if Quad cooperate to develop the infrastructure of the Andaman Nicobar Island or connect or sea cable between the Andaman Nicobar Island and the mainland of India, this infrastructure contributes such kind of capability of the India as a naval asset, and it has really made. Japan takes charge the sea cable connection between India and Andaman Nicobar Island. If the India deploys a sensor along with a fiber cable, of course it is easier to detect the Chinese submarine. So that is one of the example. So that's why Quad hasn't mentioned about this infrastructure project as a military project, but as a reality, it has progressed, I think.
Yeah, and how do you assess the recent Quad summit that happened in New Delhi and the outcomes which came out of it? Critical minerals, port infrastructure, energy security. How do you make of all this, and how does it contributes to the larger vision of free and open Indo-Pacific?
This is very important because China tried to exploit such kind of advantage as a diplomatic card, as a coercive diplomacy. Economic coercion is the other word in this case. Because indeed 90% of the supply line of the rare earth is rely on China. And in case of Japan, a little bit better, but in the world that is reality. And anyway, Japan also rely on China because more than 60%. So when the President Trump imposed the sanction to China last year, 2025, that time China replied to stop the supply line of the rare earth, and the US rethink the tariff. That is perception of the observers, and so that's why this is a strong card. But in this case, how to deal with it? Only one country, the mine is limited, but 4 countries, more variety of the rare earths we can get so that's why Quad can work very well as a counter-China strategy in this case. So this rare earth is very important view from the military, because Americans' high-end weapons rely on rare earths. So this means that getting the rare earths from China and making the weapon against China is a reality. But China has already identified this problem and tried to cut supply. In this case, to counter China, we need to find alternative source, and the Quad cooperation can work well. In the seabed, Japan also has the layers. Australia has many variety of the layers. US has, that's true. So how to develop, how to share, how to stock, many issue is following. In this case, Quad is very useful.
Yeah, talking
Ah,
about finally, if you could recommend one major initiative that the Quad should prioritize over the next 5 years to strengthen security and stability in the Indo-Pacific, what it would be, and why do you see such a framework would work?
Ideal situation is how to share the sensitive information and coordinate the military operation. That is the best way, of course, because China faces this country at the same time. That's why this is useful to maintain military balance to deter China's ambition. But sharing sensitive information or coordinating the military operation is very difficult and a very advanced topic in the cooperation. So that's why firstly, step by step, we should enhance. Even if such kind of the high level cooperation hasn't made, still, view from China, China need to divide their military asset or expenditure as a multiple front if the Quad cooperate each other. So that's why Quad is working already, and one by one we should stepping up, and it will improve the situation. That is true. So we should continue this framework and advance. Of course, there is a huge potential we have. We should do that, but step by step is also the practical way and better than nothing, of course.
Yeah, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your insights on the future of the Quad and Indo-Pacific security.
Thank you very much.